Everybody, this is your girl Nio Campbell with WHUT Digital, and I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, sports broadcaster, the one and only James Brown, also known as JB. It's a pleasure to be standing with you.
Ms. Campbell, likewise, and thank you very much for having me too.
Thank you so much for coming to the campus and just spitting all your knowledge today. And I really do have to just, ask you, there was a lot of stuff that you brought up in the mass of your over 30-year career. But what is something that has stuck with you that you learned early on?
I think one of the points that I drove home to the students is the benefit of relationship. Again, here at Howard University, Jeff Lee is a gentleman who hired me many years ago when he was an executive with BET. And Rock Newman, whose show I was on, we've had a long-standing relationship. So relationship really paid dividends in this regard. And the fact that I know them and trust them, hoping that we have had open discussions where we gave frank answers that purposely will benefit others as well too if they trust the source it came from.
Definitely. And speaking of relationships, I think of your influences. You brought up Morgan Wooten, who was your basketball coach, your mom and your dad on the Rock Newman show. Can you just tell me who were one of your biggest influences when it comes to your life and career?
Wow. One of the first names that comes to mind is Tony Dungy, the former Super Bowl winning coach with the Indianapolis Colts. Is a strong man of character, integrity, and faith, who has won at the highest level and is doing better in his second act in his life, much like my friend Rock Newman, who is doing the same thing as well too in terms of the next phase of life, doing even better than the first one. So I have those kind of friends that I pride myself on having in my inner circle to be helpful. And Rock can speak about that because I texted him at like 5 o'clock in the morning, looking to get some feedback on something, which he was there. Coach Tony Dungy certainly is one. And I've got a number of friends in the ministry as well. There's an Irish pastor in Gaithersburg, Maryland, Pastor Dale O'Shield of a Church of the Redeemer, Pastor Weaver over at Greater Mount Nebo AME. So I've got a number of friends in the ministry, and I try to surround myself with people, Dr. Tony Evans down in Dallas, Texas, to try to make sure I've got the right kind of people around me helping me with the best kind of input to be the best that I can be. Does that make sense, Ms. Campbell?
No, it definitely does. And you bring up faith, and it makes me think of Sunday football, which is something that you were a part of. And you got to see players that are currently in the league and their relationship with God. And faith is at the center of who you are in your career. Can you tell me, were you ever afraid to kind of make that and put that as a forefront in your career?
Wow, great question, Ms. Campbell. I like to say that I don't go around trying to beat people over the head with the Bible, but I certainly try to model the doctrines, the tenets, the principles, the precepts in the Bible. And if people then ask me about it, I'll certainly share with them that. I know there's an old expression attributed to St. Francis of Assisi that says that most people would prefer to see a good sermon than to hear a good sermon. So I hope that I'm walking properly to model as an ambassador for Christ what it is I do. And there are a number of players, as you just alluded to, who are men of faith, come from families of faith as well too, who I think represent the sport exceedingly well because it's the best in the game of life.
Yeah, and I even think about, like, as a little kid, I remember when the Colts were in the Super Bowl, and my dad's like, Tony Dungy, he's a Christian man. And I think that's so important, like, again, with you, like, growing up, my parents were like, you need to look at James Brown if you want to do something in this career because he's a minister. And so I thank you for that, and I thank you for speaking the truth and speaking about the Bible.
Wow. Well, I often tease that I'm a little too dark to blush, but I am when you say that, so thank you very much. And that's humbling to hear, Ms. Campbell.
I appreciate that. And I do have to ask you one last question, because you're a local Washingtonian, you're born here in D.C., and we heard about and you also worked for the Washington Bullets, which is now the Washington Wizards, and we heard yesterday that John Wall, now due to his Achilles, will be out for another year. What do you think about the team? Where do you think the team will be in the next year? The new direction the team will have to go in now that he'll be out?
Wow, athletics is always a good example of how people can rebound in the game of life whenever there's an unexpected blow that comes their way. He is a tremendous talent. I'm even more impressed with how he gives of his time and his resources to help others. That, to me, separates him from the rest of the masses in that regard. But in terms of a lesson in the game of life, to know that trials and tribulations will come, but you've got to stand on what you know is tried and true. You hear in football when people will say it's next man up or next woman up to do the job, somebody else is going to be given an opportunity now that wasn't planned for. So that's why I say you always prepare for the opportunity ahead of when that opportunity presents itself so that you can maximize on it. And if the team is thinking in those terms, they've got to look going ahead. When he comes back, John Wall, he's still going to be a prodigious talent, but they've got to think about, okay, what do we do now to rally and rebound? Just like in a game of life, if there's a setback in life, you can't dwell on it. You can't wallow in the past. You got to be focused on the future and what we need to do to get the job done. Hopefully that's the overarching objective of team leadership as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for all your wisdom. This has been an exclusive interview with the one and only JB, James Brown, the godfather of gold.
You heard that
the
one.
godfather of gold.